The fluorescent lights of Mart Store 247 buzzed with an unsettling hum, casting harsh shadows in the late evening. Daniel Holt, disguised as janitor David Hall, took a deep breath and adjusted his fake glasses. Tonight was his first night on the job, and he was ready to uncover the truth behind whispers of abuse and corruption swirling around the store. As Daniel ventured deeper into the aisles, he spotted a woman with tired eyes and a tight ponytail. "You must be the new guy," she said softly, glancing over her shoulder. "I'm Tina. This place is tough. Just keep your head down." "Why?" Daniel asked, curiosity piqued. "Rick runs a tight ship," Tina whispered, worry etched on her face. "He doesn't tolerate mistakes. Just, trust me, stick to your tasks and stay out of his way." Before Daniel could respond, a shuffle caught his attention. An elderly janitor, Lewis, pushed a mop bucket toward them. His hands were red and cracked, and he moved slowly, as if each step pained him. "This is Lewis," Tina introduced. "He's part of your team." Lewis nodded but caught sight of Rick, their intimidating manager, striding toward them. "What are you chatting about?" Rick's voice thundered. "We don't pay you to talk, Hall. Get to work." Daniel felt a wave of anger, but he held it back. "I was just getting instructions," he replied, keeping his tone steady. "Remember, I expect every corner of this store cleaned before your shift is over," Rick commanded, glaring at both of them. "And no slacking off." As Rick took his clipboard and turned to leave, Daniel noticed an unsettling smirk on his face. It felt menacing. The dread in the air thickened. "You should be careful," Lewis whispered as Rick strutted away. "He's dangerous." Just then, Rick barked from across the store. "Hall, there's a spill in aisle 12. Clean it up." Daniel exchanged worried looks with Tina and Lewis before heading toward aisle 12. When he arrived, he found a large jar of pickles shattered on the floor, juice seeping into the tiles. Where were the gloves? He searched but found nothing. Just as he knelt down to clean, Tina appeared beside him, quietly handing over a pair of rubber gloves. "I keep extras in my locker," she hissed. "Don't let Rick see you using them." "Why?" Daniel asked, confused. "Because he doesn't care about our safety," she replied, shaking her head. "We're just workers to him." Determined to find out more, Daniel wiped up the mess while thinking about what he'd heard. Something was very wrong in this store. But no sooner had he cleaned up the spill than his phone buzzed with a message. It was from someone who wanted to remain anonymous, saying they had crucial information about Rick. Feeling uneasy, Daniel pocketed his phone. He needed to find out who was behind these whispers. Could it be someone in charge? Just then, Rick walked back into the aisle, and Daniel quickly straightened up, acting busy. Rick's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why are you standing there? Get back to work." Daniel suppressed the urge to confront him. "Yes, sir. Just finishing up," he replied. But as he started to walk away, he noticed Rick scribbling on his clipboard again, an unsettling glimmer in his eyes. Daniel's determination to uncover the truth strengthened. He was not just here to clean floors. He was here to expose the darkness lurking behind the scenes. And as he glanced back at Rick, a sense of resolve settled in his gut. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, mirroring the storm brewing inside Mart. This was just the beginning, and Daniel was ready for the fight that lay ahead. Just as Daniel turned to leave, the ominous buzz in the fluorescent lights intensified, a fitting backdrop to the turmoil swirling in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break loose at Store 247. The message on his phone gnawed at him, a distraction he couldn't afford. With a quick glance around, he walked into the break room, hoping to find a moment of privacy to read it. The long table was cluttered with old coffee mugs and scattered paperwork, and the flickering overhead lights added an eerie ambience. He pulled out his phone. "Meet me in the storage room at 3 a.m. The message read from an unknown number. "I have proof." Daniel's heart raced. Proof about Rick and the rumors echoing through the store? He could hardly believe it. But something about the anonymity made him hesitant. Who was this person? And could he trust them? Before he could ponder further, Tina entered the break room, her face a mask of worry. "David, you okay?" she asked. "You look pale." I just got a message, he replied, trying to sound casual. I'm meeting someone about the conditions here. What? She exclaimed, eyes widening. You have to be careful. Rick keeps a watchful eye. If he catches wind of this. He won't, Daniel assured her, a determined glint in his eyes. I need to know what's really happening. There's more to this than just bad management. Tina bit her lip, glancing nervously toward the door. Just don't say a word to anyone. I don't want to see you get in trouble. Trust me, I won't, he said softly, sensing her genuine concern. But I need to do this. As they left the break room, the clock ticked closer to midnight. Daniel felt the weight of his plan, every detail mattered. He had to keep it all under the radar. Hours passed, each moment stretching longer than the last as he cleaned and worked alongside Lewis, who seemed more exhausted with every passing minute. Daniel kept an ear out for any news or changes in Rick's behavior. Finally, the clock struck 3. Daniel took a deep breath, glancing around. The coast was clear. He slipped away toward the storage room at the far back of the store. The air felt charged. He didn't know who he was about to meet, but both fear and excitement clashed inside him. Reaching the storage room, he pushed the door open silently. The vast space was dimly lit, boxes stacked high against the walls. He stepped cautiously inside, looking for any sign of the person who had sent the message. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, and Daniel's breath hitched. It was Diane, another janitor known for rarely speaking during shifts. Her eyes darted toward the door, fear painted across her face. Are you alone? Diane whispered, tension rippling in her voice. Yes, Daniel replied, trying to keep his voice steady. You sent the message. Diane nodded, clutching a small notebook close to her chest. I overheard Rick talking. He's been skimming wages. It's worse than we thought. Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline. How much are we talking about? Thousands, Diane murmured, glancing nervously at the door again. He's not just cutting corners. He's robbing us all blind. This notebook, I've been tracking it all. What kind of proof do you have? Daniel pressed, taking a step closer. I recorded his conversations and documented every instance of wage theft I could find. But it's dangerous. If Rick finds out, her voice trailed off, fear gripping her like a vice. As Diane flipped open her notebook, Daniel noticed movement behind her. Rick was approaching the storage room, his footsteps heavy and menacing, his shadow getting longer as he drew near. Quick, hide! Daniel hissed, panic surging. They dashed behind a stack of boxes, hearts pounding. Through the gap in the boxes, they watched as Rick entered the room, his eyes scanning the area with suspicion. I know you're in here, David. Don't think you can hide. Daniel's breath caught in his throat, never understanding how much danger his investigation would unleash. Rick's voice echoed off the walls, and the tension escalated. What did he know? Had someone ratted him out? As Daniel crouched in silence, his mind raced with the possibilities. He was ready to expose Rick, but if he was caught now, it could end not only his job but everything he had planned to uncover. Then, with a show of anger, Rick slammed a fist on a nearby box. You think you can take from me? You'll regret messing with my store. The fear coursing through Daniel's veins stirred something inside him. The stakes were higher than he ever anticipated. They had to act. And they had to do it fast. Because if Rick wasn't scared yet, he would be soon. As Daniel crouched behind the stack of boxes, the weight of Rick's words pressed down on him like a shroud. He couldn't just fade into the darkness and hope it would all blow over. This was a standoff too critical to ignore. His heart raced, adrenaline heightening his senses as he and Diane remained silent, barely breathing, but straining to listen closely. Rick paced the room, and Daniel could see the tension in his shoulders. You think I don't know what's going on around here? He snarled, his voice dripping with venom. You think I can't smell a rat? Daniel exchanged a quick glance with Diane. He could feel her fear, but he also sensed the heat of determination bubbling within himself. He had to take control of the situation. Suddenly, Rick kicked a box, sending it tumbling. I'll find out who's been snooping, mark my words. And when I do, they'll pay. Diane whimpered softly, and Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her arm. Stay calm, he whispered. We aren't giving up. We need to get out of here and expose him before he can do any more damage. But before they could devise a plan, Rick stepped back toward the door, leaving them in the shadows. I know you're in here, Hall, he shouted, the menace in his tone unmistakable. You and your little investigations. This isn't over. With Rick now outside the storage room, Daniel felt a surge of urgency. This is our chance, he whispered to Diane. We need to find a way to gather this evidence, and fast. They both slipped out from behind the boxes, careful not to make a sound as they surveyed the storage room. Where can we set up to find more evidence? Daniel asked, his mind racing. We need to document this, get those recordings. There's a hidden camera on his office wall, Diane said, glancing at the door, still on high alert. If we can get in there and connect to his computer, I can show you everything I found. Then let's move. We don't have much time, Daniel replied, determination fueling his every word. Heart pounding, they crept toward the manager's office. The hallway felt like a labyrinth, each corner echoing with the distant hum of the store. As they approached the door, a shiver ran down Daniel's spine. If he catches us. He won't, Diane interjected. We can do this. With a shaky hand, Daniel pushed open the door. The office was dimly lit, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. The walls bore evidence of Rick's authority, certificates of achievement hung framed, while boxes of paperwork cluttered the desk. Diane rushed to the desk, rifling through drawers. The files should be in here somewhere. Daniel scanned the room, his instincts heightened. He'd sensed Rick's anger. They had to be quick. Just then, he noticed the computer screen flicker. Rick's personal desktop was unlocked, displaying an array of folders. Got it! Diane exclaimed, pulling out a small USB drive from her pocket. I can copy everything I need if I can get access to that computer. Do it, Daniel urged, keeping an eye on the door. Just then, the lights flickered ominously and Daniel's heart sank. The flickering could be a sign. The storm outside was really picking up. Hurry, he urged, glancing back at the door. We don't know how long we have. Diane began racing through files on the computer and clicked on a folder labeled Financial Reports. It's all here, she murmured, navigating through spreadsheets that showed irregularities and discrepancies. Suddenly, the door handle rattled violently. Daniel's stomach dropped. He's coming, he hissed, panic surging as he rushed to help Diane. So much depended on this moment. They needed to finish copying before getting caught. Almost done, she gasped, her eyes darting between the screen and the door. Finally, as the handle rattled again, Diane pulled out the USB and tucked it into her pocket. Got it. Let's get out. Just as they turned to escape, the door swung open, and there stood Rick, eyes blazing with fury. Well, he sneered. Looks like I caught you in the act. Run! Daniel yelled, grabbing Diane's arm, and they surged past Rick, who lunged after them. They flew down the hall, heartbeats pounding in sync with their frantic footsteps. Daniel felt like a hunted animal, alive with adrenaline. They blasted through aisles of products, confusion trailing behind them. Surely, he'd heard their footsteps by now. Back to the break room, he shouted, leading the way. They ducked into the room and barricaded the door with a nearby chair just before they heard Rick's footsteps thundering closer. Panting, they found a moment to catch their breath. What now? Diane gasped, her eyes wide with fear. We can't just sit here, Daniel replied, frantically scanning the room for options. We need to inform someone higher up, maybe the media if it comes to that. But first, we should make sure we have that evidence safe. Just as Daniel finished his sentence, the door rattled again with a fierce bang. You think you can hide? Rick's voice boomed from the other side. I always get what I want. With adrenaline coursing through him, Daniel turned to Diane, his resolve hardening. We have to make sure we leave this store with that evidence. We can't let Rick silence us. Their fight was far from over, and they would have to outsmart Rick to reveal the truth behind the shadows of Hmart. The banging on the door reverberated through the small break room, each thud a reminder of the danger lurking right outside. Daniel felt an icy grip of fear settle in his stomach, but it was quickly shadowed by a spark of defiance. "We have to outsmart him," he said, rallying both of them. "We cannot let him intimidate us." "Do you have a plan?" Diane asked, her voice quivering but determined. "Just the beginnings of one," Daniel replied. "We need to buy some time. If we can create a distraction, we might be able to slip out of here with the evidence." "How?" Diane looked around, her eyes darting from the window to the door, searching for any viable escape route. "Think. We have to use what's around us. Can you find anything we can use to make noise? Something that could lead him away?" Diane's face lit up with an idea. "What if we use the microwave? If we set it to run and leave it, it'll create a sound that will draw him toward the kitchen area. Then we can sneak out." "Perfect!" Daniel exclaimed, moving immediately toward the microwave. "I'll set it up, you keep watch." He hurriedly filled a paper cup with water and popped it into the microwave, setting it to run for a few minutes. The hum of the appliance was reassuring, and he could already feel adrenaline pushing away some of his fear. As the microwave's timer counted down, they exchanged worried glances, every second stretching unnaturally. The sounds outside were getting more frantic, Rick growing increasingly impatient. "Open the door, you little rats," he hollered. "Do you think I won't find you? You can't hide forever." "Okay, it's almost ready," Daniel said, his heart racing. "When I hit the start button, you make your way to the door. We'll head out the back exit." Diane nodded, her eyes wide with determination. Daniel pressed the button, and the microwave whirred to life, the sound blending with the heightened tension in the air. They shared one last glance, a silent agreement passing between them. "Now," Daniel whispered, and they darted toward the back exit. As they moved cautiously through the break room, a loud beep from the microwave pierced the air. It was both a release of nervous energy and a signal. Rick's enraged yells echoed in the hall, and the distraction worked. "What the hell?" he shouted, stomping toward the kitchen area with obvious frustration. Daniel and Diane slipped through the back exit and into the dark alley behind the store. The cool night air enveloped them, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. "Let's hurry," Daniel urged, taking Diane's hand. "We have to find a way to get out of here without being seen." They rushed through the alley, adrenaline propelling them forward. Daniel could hear Rick's furious shouts growing dimmer as they rounded a corner, but he couldn't let himself relax until they were safely away. "Where do we go now?" Diane asked, glancing around in the dim light. "Let's head to the diner a few blocks away," Daniel suggested. "We can regroup there and figure out our next move. We need to get this evidence somewhere safe and accessible." As they made their way toward the diner, the weight of Diane's small notebook and the USB drive felt like an anchor of hope. They were on the verge of exposure, the truth restless and waiting to be unveiled. When they finally reached the diner, the neon signs flickered invitingly, casting a warm glow in the dim street. The place was still buzzing with the late-night crowd, and Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him as they stepped inside. They found a booth in the corner, away from prying eyes, and plopped down. "What now?" Diane asked, pulling the notebook from her bag and placing it on the table. "We have what we need, but how do we make sure it gets out?" Daniel took a deep breath, his mind racing. "We need to contact someone trustworthy. We can't go to the police. They might be on Rick's side. We need someone in the media, or maybe even a lawyer who can help us file a formal complaint. But we have to be careful." "I know a reporter who has covered labor issues before," Diane said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "His name is Mark. He works for the local paper. If we can get in touch with him, he might take us seriously." "Let's do it," Daniel urged, pulling out his phone. But as he searched for contacts, a sinking feeling hit him. "I don't have the battery for a call. If we can't reach him directly." "Then we find a payphone," Diane interjected, determination brightening her tired eyes. "There's one up the block, I think. We can use it discreetly." Daniel nodded, and they quickly downed their coffee before slipping out of the diner. The adrenaline was ebbing a bit, replaced with the sobering necessity of their impending confrontation. They moved briskly, scanning around for any sign of Rick, but they were momentarily free from his shadow. When they reached the payphone, Daniel felt a flicker of hope ignite again. He inserted the coins, and Diane shared the number with trembling fingers. As the phone began to ring, he held his breath, wishing for a miracle. "Come on, pick up," he murmured. Just as he began to doubt, a gruff voice answered. "Hello, Mark. It's Daniel Hall," he began quickly, aware of how unusual it must have sounded. "I need to speak to you urgently about something serious, something that could expose a major issue at Mart." "Daniel. From the store?" Mark replied. "What's going on?" Before Daniel could answer, he heard a distant noise that sent chills down his spine. The unmistakable sound of a car skidding to a halt nearby. His heart raced as he turned toward the street. The headlights bore down upon them, illuminating the scene starkly. "Wait, I think," Mark's voice faded as Daniel abruptly hung up the phone. "Diane," he gasped, fear pounding through his veins. "It's Rick. We need to move, now." With no time to lose, they dashed from the payphone, but as they rounded the corner, Daniel's pulse quickened. There, parked at the curb, was Rick's truck, its engine rumbling ominously. "We can't go that way," Diane said, panic clear. "He'll see us." "Then we have to double back," Daniel said urgently. "We'll figure something out." They sprinted down an alley that twisted into darkness, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. The adrenaline surged, urging them onward as they pushed past crates and dumpsters, desperately looking for any place to hide. Their limbs felt heavy, yet they kept running, their breaths sharp in the cold air. "What if we can find the back door to a building?" Diane suggested, glancing around. "There. The cafe." Daniel pointed at a small storefront that had an open door. They ducked inside and quickly found themselves in a quiet kitchen, the distant clatter of dishes providing a backdrop to their frantic whispers. "Do you think we lost him?" Diane asked, glancing over her shoulder. "I hope so," Daniel replied, the adrenaline still buzzing through his veins. "But we can't stay here. We need to call Mark again once it's safe." They waited in the dim light, hearts racing, hoping they hadn't been followed. Suddenly, the cafe door swung open, and they heard the unmistakable voice of Rick. "You can't hide from me. I'm going to expose you both for what you really are." Panic surged in Daniel's chest again as he realized they were cornered. With no other option, they dashed to a back exit, their resolve steeled. They might be running, but they weren't giving up without a fight. As they burst into the alley behind the cafe, Daniel grasped Diane's arm, his voice low and determined. "It's now or never. We get this evidence to Mark. We must end this tonight." In that moment of desperation, the horizon seemed distant and dark, but they were determined to forge ahead. They could not let fear dictate their next move, not when the truth was waiting to break free. With the night wrapped around them, they took off into the shadows, ready for whatever came next, poised to confront the darkness threatening to swallow their lives whole.